dive in. So I'm joined here this evening with Sean because Kyle's sick. And running the controls is Brandon instead of Daniel. And then we're joined by two guests, and that's Blayne and Brandon. And Brandon and Blayne wrote the book, Perseverance is Greater Than Endurance. I'm assuming that's a greater than sign.
You got it.
You got it.
Okay.
That's all the math that's in the book.
Lead with resilience, grow through adversity, win together. So you guys can find your copy. We'll talk about that later. But we're going to dive into their career as well as this book and some of the leadership principles that they've talked about. So you guys did a talk in which we both watched the video and explained your background and stuff like that. Within the book, in the first preface, in the first couple chapters and stuff, and weave throughout the whole entire book, actually, you talk about your background. But the audience doesn't know anything about your background. So I don't know who wants to go first, Brandon, you or Blayne? Brandon, all right.
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So I joined the Army in 1997, right out of high school. After finishing all the prerequisites, I was assigned to the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and I ended up staying in the 75th Ranger Regiment for just shy of a decade. So I was a squad leader when the towers fell on 9/11, and actually ended up over in the Middle East about 8 days after. We had a pre-planned deployment to Jordan. And the plan shifted, obviously, once we got over there, and things got pretty spicy. Yeah, things. We ended up coming back from Jordan, but then went over to Afghanistan. So did 4 rotations to Afghanistan. Ended up separating from the Army in 2009 because I really wanted to see if I could kind of figure out how to be a dad and how to be a husband. We had a really tough start. Which we talk about a little bit in the book and we can get into here a little bit. But since then, so the last, 15, 16 years, I've been working in the healthcare space, which is where me and this guy met. We have done nonprofit stuff. And now we started our company 5 years ago. I can't believe we're on our 6th year of business.
Congratulations.
And, hey, thanks.
I mean, those first 3 or 4 years are the worst.
Yeah, it's...
What's the name of the company?
Our company is Applied Leadership Partners, and so our whole opportunity is that we come alongside leaders that are doing great things in the world, and we just try to help them create a common leadership language within their organization, help them be more effective, and help them do that for the long haul. And talk about 3 years is a nice mark to hit as a business. So here's a fun story for you. We actually opened our doors in March of 2020, and 3 days later, the world shut down for COVID. So we got a chance to really persevere right from Jump Street.
I like how you brought persevere in there.
Yeah. What else is new, right?
Yeah, we didn't have to take our own medicine for a long time.
Yeah. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So when you said healthcare space, which part of the healthcare space? Like
Yes.
Health insurance, pharmacy benefit management?
Laboratory, actually.
Laboratory,
Yeah.
So like life sciences then.
Yeah, so we were, both Blayne and I were commercial representatives, sales reps for a subdivision of Quest Diagnostics called Ameripath.
I know Quest Diagnostics.
Yeah, who doesn't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I've peed in some of their cups. But we actually, we had a really great opportunity, and I would say early adopters of hiring military talent, this subdivision of Quest, which focused on cancer diagnostics. So our call points were urologists, hematology oncologists, gastroenterologists. And what this company did is they really went out to find a lot of junior military officers, senior enlisted, and they kind of threw us at the wall and said, let's see if these cats stick.
Pharma companies did that a lot as well.
Yeah.
They went out after a lot of the junior officers, like from second lieutenant to captain, time period or whatever, and grab those guys, and they'd be the guys going and knocking on doors at the doctor's office. Hey, do you know about this drug? And
That was us.
That was you guys. Okay.
Except we were doing laboratory sales, so we had to convince at times physicians who had their own pathology laboratories to send their tissue samples to our laboratory as opposed to their own. So that got interesting too.
Yeah. So did you guys work for the same company?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, but not different territories though.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what was your territory?
Mine was Alabama.
Oh, bless you. And yours?
I was in Florida.
Oh, see, that's great. Yeah. Where about in Florida? The whole state?
I had the greater Tampa, greater Orlando, and then all the way up the Panhandle to Pensacola. So
Okay.
Gainesville, Ocala, all that as well. Yeah.
I'm from Milton, a little small town. You probably didn't go to that hospital.
No, I've been to Milton.
Have you really?
So
yeah.
funny side story. I didn't know anything about medicine or cancer diagnostics or any of that when they hired me, like everybody else. I learned as much as I could in like the 2 weeks of training. But what I figured out was I could get into these small rural hospitals and small practices. I just had no shot at like Orlando Health or Tampa General. They'd see me coming and be like, get out of here.
Yeah.
You know, the pros had already kind of like anchored into those big accounts. And so I basically built my whole business off of a one doctor practice in Brooksville. I'd go to Spring Hill, Ocala, Winter Haven. If there was a rural practice anywhere in the state of Florida, I knew where it was at and bought them lunch.
Yeah, nice.
And I just kind of stayed out of the city centers because I just wasn't good enough to compete.
And then you guys met like at a conference or
We
something?
met at a national sales meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Now, at that time frame, when was it that you figured out that each of you were veterans? I mean, it was like first conversation? Right. That generally is what happened.
It was sort of like,
Immediate. Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember if it was before or after the beach football game.
yeah, it was early though.
That guy must work out.
Exactly. That's what I was like.
Well, Brandon's got a 75th Ranger Regiment tattoo between his shoulder blades. So
Oh, there you go.
pretty easy to tell.
That gives it away.
Yeah, we lined up on the as the out route runners there, and looks over and he's just like,
So, Blayne, tell us about your background.
Yeah, so I grew up down in Southwest Florida. Both my parents are from the Midwest, so I had kind of like a traditional Midwestern, keep your powder dry, work hard, do it right the first time kind of upbringing. I really wanted to go to Duke when I was a kid and couldn't afford it. So I thought I might go to the University of Florida. And
Go Gators.
yeah, I ended up coming back and going to grad school at Florida. So I got my chance to be a Gator eventually. But I said I probably wouldn't do a very good job there. There's just too many other things to do besides school. So I went to West Point. I wasn't crazy about joining the military. It was just kind of my best opportunity to go to college, honestly. I looked at it like a 18-year-old kid thinking about his future. Over my 4 years of indoctrination, though, at West Point, I was a little bit more eager to serve in the Army. And then I graduated in June of '01. And then a few months later, I was the Armor Officer Basic Course at Fort Knox, cleaning weapons in the motor pool. 9/11 happens. You know, the whole trajectory of my life changed. I suddenly felt quite a lot different about my service. I went out to Fort Hood, Texas. I was a tank platoon leader for my first gig, which was a really awesome job in a lot of ways. But what killed me was I spent a lot of time sitting in the motor pool, you know, working on tanks that were breaking, sitting still while watching the war going on in Afghanistan on CNN. And it made me a little crazy. So I started beating up the SF recruiter on Fort Hood. And they were really nice to me. And they gave me like the packet and the training plan and stuff. But like my fifth time showing up, they were finally like, "Hey, get out of here! Like you need to go be a lieutenant for a while and come back in a couple of years." And I was like, "Fine." And then my unit went to Iraq at the very beginning of '04. So I had plenty to do before it was time to be an SF guy. So I was a Cav Scout, like you. Was a brigade reconnaissance team leader. Spent '04 in greater kind of Baghdad, Fallujah, west of Baghdad mostly. Got a chance to work with some SF guys though while I was downrange in '04 from 5th Group. And they were better than advertised. They were just incredibly competent, mature, capable. They actually were getting things done while I was mostly conducting movement to IED and hitting dry holes.
Yeah. They were handing off a lot of the HVT. And
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
Here you go.
They would show up at our base
right
and
there.
slide a little folder with a Falcon View map on it and say, like, we're super busy. If you want to go get this weapon cache or pull this guy off the battlefield, you knock yourself out. And we're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I got to see those guys firsthand and the effectiveness, not just like the cool factor, but they just actually were really, really effective at fighting the war. And I was like, man, if we're going to win this thing, I think these guys have got something to offer.
Yeah.
Were you already airborne at that point?
I'd been to airborne school. Yeah.
While at West Point?
Yep. I'd been to the Sapper Leader course.
Okay.
Which we can talk about. I think one of the best schools in the Army, if not the
right?
best school back then. Phenomenal course. So I had some good training, and the BRT was an amazing unit. Being with Cav Scouts at that level those guys were so resourceful, so clever.
So can we just give a big shout out? I mean, you're stacked then. So you've got
He's got the
Sapper,
quad stack.
the Ranger, the SF tab,
Well, we haven't got SF yet. They haven't.
Oh, that's right. We haven't got there yet. Sorry.
Good job.
You were
Buried the lead. Yeah.
No, so
What a jerk.
That's okay. That's the most SF thing you're going to see all day, though, is somebody else saying, I think he's a Green Beret.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So
So that was our tie-in was Iraq.
we were together. We were there at the
1-7,
same time. You were in 1-7. I was in Delta 9 Cav, 2nd Brigade.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So cool.
So this is pre-GWAT. I mean, you can call it GWAT, but we say it's kind of pre-GWAT because we weren't really asymmetric at that point. We really didn't know. When I say we, conventional, didn't know what asymmetric was. Probably didn't even know how to spell it. Then we get down to Baghdad, and all of a sudden you're getting things from everywhere. Like, oh, so this is asymmetric. That's when we still called it HIC, right?
Yeah.
High intensity combat instead of decisive action, direct action, or whatever they're calling it nowadays. So there's a lot of growing that we did down there. And then the Cav Scouts were actually kind of special back then. I mean, we did Div Cav, we did BRTs, we did Task Force Scouts. There was at echelon some sort of reconnaissance element that tied into one another. And then eventually we tie into like LURs or whatever, right? So it felt good to be a Cav Scout.
Yeah.
And then GWAT happened, and everybody was a Cav Scout.
Dude, this is
What do I do with these
such a
vehicles?
good point
Yeah.
because we got there in January of 04. And so the war had been on for a little while. If you remember, so we were supposed to go initially for the push, the first Cav, and we got set aside and 4th ID
ID
went in our
went,
stead. And we were talking about butthurt. Woo. And so we're pretty bummed. And instead we got a 6-week trip to NTC because we had to partially backfill another unit. So all of July and August of that year, everyone else is downrange in Baghdad, and we're at the National Training Center sweating our butts off
In
for
shelter
6
halves,
weeks.
no less.
In shelter halves. Exactly right.
We used our shelter
exactly
half
right.
and had to build trench lines.
Yeah, those canvas things that snap together in the middle, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Tent pegs and green poles, boys.
Yeah.
Oh, half of them bent from the rocks and the.
I got to share my tent with who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So we were doing that, a lot of, big boo-boo lip, feeling like we'd kind of missed the war. While we were at NTC in August, they said, hey, you're going to go in January. You got orders to go. And so we're thinking we've missed it. It's over. And then in December, we're getting ready to go, and then they caught Saddam. And so we're like, dude, that's like the last thing on the list. Like now we're definitely not going to do anything. War's over. We're going to be, guarding checkpoints or doing whatever. So we get there in January of 04 thinking it's over. And we had seen what other BRTs were being tasked to do, and it wasn't pretty. It was like colonel's detail, convoy escort, maybe. It wasn't very sexy what the reconnaissance guys were doing, and we thought we're screwed. Our boss, Colonel Mike Formica, big shout out to him, said, no. We've got this huge rural area between Baghdad and Fallujah that nobody owns right now. It's like 300 square kilometers. And all the stuff's being trafficked out there, cached out there. There's a lot going on, but no one's got eyes on it because we're completely, bunkered into these neighborhoods in Baghdad or Fallujah. So I want you guys to go, recon that whole area, conduct surveillance, do route interdiction, basically figure it out. And there were all these, rockets getting lobbed on to the green zone and the airport. And he said, look, you guys got to figure out this deal with Rocket Man. You got to figure it out. And we're like, okay.
He said Rocket Man. That brought back memories.
Yeah, right.
Right?
We had Operation Rocket Man.
That was it.
God.
So we spent
I think we all did.
Yeah.
the tie that binds,
Man.
the improvised, homemade rocket and mortar launchers, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so that was our job, and it was Wild West. And of all the things I did in the Army, that was some of the most exciting, relevant work we ever did, because like those things were raining down on the airport and the green zone every night. And we had no guidance, no resources really, other than to get out there and figure it out.
Yeah.
And you get 18 or 36 Cav Scouts out there, and eventually you figure it out. It was really, really cool. And we felt so grateful. Even then, as crusty and bitter as soldiers can be in that environment, we were really grateful that our boss said, no, you have a real world mission. We actually have stuff for you to do. You're not going to be hanging back here doing, personal security detail for the colonel. Because we saw some of our contemporaries out there and we're like, dude, that sucks. I'm glad that we're actually doing the work.
Yeah, they had a lot of guys living out there with the Iraqi Defense Forces, with the police, living on their compounds, just taking it every day. I mean, there's 5 of them out there, and then they have all the Iraqis. And you've seen the videos where they're doing like the the PT and they're trying to get them to do a side straddle hop, and it's a yard sale.
Yeah.
Right. So that was their life, and then inject contact every day. So you could have been doing that.
Yeah. So we were super lucky. Got a chance to work with the SF guys. I got my packet in while I was downrange. Came home at the end of 2004. Went to SFAS like 2 weeks later. My wife was super pumped.
Yeah.
I was home for like 1 month. I was like, yeah. So I spent Thanksgiving, first part of December at SFAS in 2004. Got through selection. So the next couple of years going through the Q course, got sent to third group. Actually, here's a funny story. I had not been to Ranger school. So I went through I went to Sapper Leader course in the fall of 2003 because we had a bunch of slots because all the guys that were supposed to go were downrange. So we took some of their slots. Then went downrange for a year, came home, went to selection, did 2 years of the whole Q course, graduated the Q course December of 2006, and started Ranger school January 4th, 2007.
No way.
Beast, man.
What a kick in the nuts. After all of that, I'd already earned my Green Beret, had my long tab, was ready to go to my unit, and my boss said, no, go ahead and go to Ranger school. I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Just what I wanted to do.
Sweet action. That was on my list.
Right on. Check.
But not right now.
And so I did everything out of order. So I got through Ranger school and showed up to my team.
Any recycles?
No, made it straight through.
This dude.
Honor graduate.
Oh yeah, you were on it.
That's right. That's right.
I was, yeah. I had some things working for me. Like I'd already been to combat and the Q course and Sapper Leader course. So
that's a big one because if you really think about it, nobody was coming back with, we'll just call it a combat patch, but nobody was really coming back with combat patches at that point. So when you were coming back with them, they're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've already been through this shit. So I'm sure Ranger School was like, oh, right.
So here's the thing about Ranger school is that it's miserable, but I don't know that it's hard in the sense that like it's not complicated.
It sucks more than it's
It just sucks. So if you're really proficient, it still is miserable. If you're not proficient, it's miserable and stressful. And what I had going for me was like I had already seen a lot of the world at that point and a lot of the Army. And so I didn't find it particularly stressful. I was like, they're telling you exactly what to do. Just do exactly what they're telling you to do and relax. And just be miserable like everybody else. So my perspective was a lot different, I think,
Yeah.
than everybody else.
It would have been a different story if you would have gone, straight out A-Bolic and then they're like, hey, go
to
Ranger.
Yeah.
Because then I would have been like, this is the most important thing in my life. And if I fail this,
that's
my whole
how
life's
it was
over.
for me. I was an 18-year-old private coming from the 2nd Ranger Battalion. It was like, come back with your shield or on it.
Yeah.
Or you're out of here.
Graduate or you're gone.
And then you go to RASP before or after?
No, you go to
RASP first.
Back in my time, you went through RIP back then.
Which was all PT.
It basically, it's like, hold on to the handle of a speeding bullet train. And if you can, you can do all the flutter kicks and push-ups and everything that we can throw at you after 3 weeks, we'll let you go to a battalion. And so I had been in 2nd Ranger Battalion for 8 months. And then, you get the chance to go down to Ranger School. And I go down to Ranger School and I'm like 18, 19 years old. It's basically you either graduate and come back, with your shit.
Yeah.
Or you can just pack your bags and you're out.
So the RIs down there, they know. I'm speaking from ignorance because I
Oh yeah.
But they know
Yes.
where people are coming from. Like this guy
Absolutely.
probably just came in.
The Bat Boys, they would call us.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
We got another Bat Boy,
So was it good or bad? I mean,
To be a Bat Boy?
yeah, as you went in.
Well, it depends on which side of the perspective you're looking. As a guy, I had other Bat Boys with me, like big shout out to Mike Jones and Rob Chacho, 175 and 375 respectively. I would have never graduated Ranger School if not for those cats.
Yeah.
But there's always the RIs are kind of taking a look and saying like, oh, these guys are from battalion, they don't really dig it all that much. Here's a fun story for you. When the Ranger Creed, right? It's at the end, recognizing I volunteer as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of my Ranger Regiment. That's what we say, in the regiment growing up. In Ranger School, it's of the Rangers. And so there I am. I'm 18 years old. We're in front of the chow hall, and I've got it. I'm, locked up, first stanza of the Ranger Creed, repeat after me. You got the whole, class and everything like that. And I get to the end of that first stanza, and all my Ranger buddies, all my Bat Boy buddies are looking. They're just looking at me. He's like, he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. And I'm like,
Somebody asked it.
of my Ranger Regiment. Dead silent. You could hear like a pin drop. Oh, we got a Bat Boy. I bet you think you're special, huh?
Go ahead and push.
So, no, it was great. Everybody get down, do push-ups, right? So I start get down and said, no, you get back up. You're special. You count it off. And I'm like, roger that, Sergeant. Push-ups, repeat after me. Here we go. And I'm calling out cadence. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm fine with it. It's cool. I'm totally cool with it.
Until you got back to the barracks.
Yeah.
You got some staff sergeant in there going, this motherfucker.
Like, that guy.
Some dude from the 101st has been trying to go to Ranger School for 6 years.
And you got the 18-year-old.
Who let these privates in here?
Right.
That's like the 18 X-ray program, right? When they sign up to go. No, that's 18 X-ray. Excuse me. They have the Ranger when you come in and you go straight to
The option 40 now.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's what they have now.
Yeah.
That's not what I went through is unassigned airborne infantry. And when I was in basic training, my drill sergeant was like, we had like late cycle, got a drill sergeant in. He had been in 375. And he's like, you know what, Young, you should really go and try to be Ranger. So I was a platoon guide the entirety of basic training. The whole time.
As well.
Yeah, what's up with that, right? Talk
The
about
reward for good work.
Yeah, talk about
work.
punishment,
I got
right?
my ass smoked for 4 months, man.
I know. Yeah, exactly. And so
at 4 o'clock in the morning.
yeah, so I go to airborne school right after. So the way it used to be is that you would go, you do your OSIT, right? Which I did down at Benning, now Fort Moore. Did the OSIT after that, we go to airborne school.
Yep.
So I go to airborne school, and I'm like, okay, so what do I do? How do I get into this whole thing? And there's, the Ranger liaison. He's got his office there. Remember the old Patches building down there? And so you go to the Ranger liaison. I go before formation. I'm like knocking on nobody's there, So I'd like write my name, standard name line down, slip it underneath his door. Come back after formation. Never saw the guy, right? Never saw. I only saw him twice, right? Staff Sergeant Bessa was his name. I only saw him twice. The first time, like in week 2 or 3, I don't remember, of airborne school, they have the briefing and they come, they do the Ranger briefing, and they, you had to write down your name on a little piece of paper saying I volunteer. And I write down my name and hand it to him, and he looks at it, he's like, are you the fucking guy that keeps coming to my office and writing your name on my chalkboard? I'm like, yeah, Roger, Sergeant. I was in the front lean and rest the entire briefing, the whole briefing. I was in the front lean and rest. So I'm like, there's no way this cat, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. This guy hates me, Second time I saw him, Friar DZ, graduation day. You see that black beret come out. He's got a clipboard in his hand, called out 3 names, and mine was one of them.
Preach and Seki.
Preach.
Black beret.
That's right.
Black
We got a
beret.
whole.
I got a whole.
Hear this guy talk about that.
I got a lot. Yeah. I experienced that.
Yeah.
June 2001.
Sorry. From all the conventional guys. Sorry. Not.
We didn't
not
even
my
want those
decision.
Back at you. You didn't want it anyways.
We didn't want it anyway. It's kind of like the SFAB where they were trying to give us a green beret. We're like, General Milley,
Please don't do that.
Yeah.
And they actually issued it to us. We're like, we don't want it. All the 5th group was mad because he named us the Legion. Like,
Yeah. I'll tell you though, we had no idea how that would become emblematic of such a radical culture and capabilities shift, because 90 days later the towers fell.
Yep.
And that tan beret, we really forged that meaning with blood and toil.
Yeah.
Over 8,000 days of continuous combat operation for the 75th Ranger Regiment. And so we could have never predicted that on that day in June 2001. We just were so frustrated about it. But I'll tell you what, man, I was very honored to have that tan beret on my head when I, finally said goodbye to the regiment in 2006.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Huge.
Yeah, you put the tan beret on in June of 01. I graduated from West Point in June of 01.
Yeah.
Both thinking like,
Yeah.
No, it's huge.
yeah, golly.
The symbolism behind it and what it represents is huge. A lot of people won't understand that either.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing.
We share that actually. with some of the companies that we work with, because, when you think about culture shifts, right, and you think about all these analogs of culture, artifacts, symbols, behaviors, routines, rhythms, the things that really make culture what it is and that really bind units together, people together, inevitably it has to shift, right? And inevitably cultures of excellence must grow and shift in order to remain excellent. And we get an opportunity to share that with a lot of companies because, we experience it in the private sector, right? We went through a $7 billion organization complete restructure where they took 6 business units, smashed them all together and kind of said, hey, go figure it out, good luck. And everybody had their own rhythms, their own cultures, their own behaviors and all that kind of stuff. And it's valuable. It's a valuable life lesson for me. And I know we've talked a lot about it and we share it with others because, for us, it was as if we were being like killed. Like we had Rangers who were road marching across the country to present their black beret to the president, to beg the president to please don't let this happen. Yeah. Don't let them take this from us. And I get it, I was right there with them, right? It was hurtful because we suffered for it. We suffered to have the right to wear that piece of headgear, and yet, the Rangers that climbed Pointe du Hoc weren't wearing a black beret. Yeah. And, when we deployed forward, we weren't carrying, M1 Garands. Like, things naturally must evolve in order to be relevant and excellent for the long haul, right? We make the distinction that, like, we have to be careful because too often it turns into old is bad and new is good, when in reality it was old was good and new is relevant and good. Yeah. It's just different. And so I think when you hold on to kind of like what makes that culture so excellent, the commitment to leadership, to effectiveness, the commitment to, the big 5 that we had, all that kind of stuff, that's what made us so lethal. That's what made us the premier direct action raid force. And the world didn't need the Rangers of the 80s and 90s anymore. It needed the Rangers of the GWAT.
Yeah. It's so such an excellent point because when you think about like the 70s and Vietnam, every headgear was out there. Cowboy hats. Every kind of colored beret was being worn by different units. When I got to 11th ACR and flew to Germany, they were pissed because they gave up the black beret and had to give it to the Ranger Regiment because the Cav was used to wearing the black beret at that time frame. So everybody's kind of evolved, but I love how you position that with the culture because one of the most challenging things to do is within an organization is change the culture of that organization. It starts with the top, and it starts with the true belief of something that everybody can rally behind, that people can get passionate about. There's a purpose, and everybody can see the vision of where we're driving to. Yeah. So at least when you guys changed the beret, it was just a piece of headgear and recognized as much, but you didn't lose your identity. You just created the beret now being the thing that represents you. When I see a tan beret, it's now 75th, where it was the black beret.
Right.
But it took a while for everybody to get adjusted to that. All airborne units had a really big problem with even anybody wearing a beret, outside of the 3 that wore the beret at that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conventional army, let's face it, didn't know how to shave it, didn't know how to shape it.
That's true.
And it looked ugly.
Concur. It got weird.
It was so bad. It got really weird for a long period of time.
Because he had so many different hairstyles.
I know.
And it was just like, oh.
They left the liner in it. It was fat. It looked like it was ugly.
It was like a significant emotional event every day coming on post. I remember when it first changed. I remember driving on post, and there was somebody mowing the lawn, way down the road from Second Bat, and I was like, "What the hell is happening here right now?" It was a significant emotional event.
Yeah.
We all got through it.
Well, I like that.
We got through it.
Yeah. God gave us a lot of other things to focus on for the next 10 years.
Got
our minds off the head here real fast.
But the Tower of Power, really cool, man, that you went through each of those different. Would you wear the whole stack every once in a while, or when you were right before you got out, did you showcase it all?
So this is pretty funny. we went to the ACU, right? And then you had like the Velcro stuff
Yeah.
and whatever. And the SF guys, that group, you never really wore much of your stuff. So you might have it on your left shoulder every now and then, but not that often. I've literally never one single time in my entire life worn a CIB. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I have a CIB. I've never literally one time ever had it on. Not one time. It's just the way things were just different then. And you know,
It goes
when
back
I
to culture,
transitioned out,
though.
like,
Yeah.
It goes back to I went to Enoch, right? So I went to Enoch at Benning, and you know, fun fact, even the special mission unit guys go through Enoch.
Oh, yeah.
And they showed up with a tan beret. One guy had a maroon beret. Yep. Nobody could tell what they were, and they were completely sterile other than name tapes and like some arbitrary patch, right? But we knew who the Rangers were.
Well,
You know, the RDD guys came through, and they
back
had
in the day.
We make sure that we tell everyone.
yeah, everybody had. I mean, vignette is that, you know, in my small group, I had a couple of SMUs, a couple of SMU guys in there, Delta Force cats.
Yeah, yeah.
That, you know, you just didn't talk about. It's like Fight Club, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're sitting there and we're drinking some beers and trading war stories, sort of. I'm not trading shit because my war stories suck compared to theirs. And one of their guys,
do that. Don't you want down yourself
I'm not
on
gonna
us
let you
here,
do that,
Sean.
man. I know where you were in 04.
We're not letting you do that on us here, buddy.
Well, I mean, so he comes in. So one of the guys, and I won't put his name out there, was the first sergeant for our Enoch group. And I mean, he knew absolutely nothing about drill and ceremony. He came in, spent 2 years at 82nd, ended up Ranger Bat, 2 years in. He takes a long walk. He does it twice, and then he ends up, doing that. He has no idea how to run a formation. So he's like taking accountability from the other side of the formation, and everybody's just going with it, right? And so he gives 100% accountability to the cadre, and then they find out that somebody was missing. Somebody was out of ranks. And so now he's accountable for that action, and he has to go stand in front of the commandant the next day.
Oh, my God.
So we're sitting there drinking beer, talking about stuff, and one of his partners comes in and throws like this big batch of bolo badges on the bed, and he's just like, pick what you want. And so he's in there like asking for help, trying to put these subdued pin-on bolo badges on his uniform. And I'm like, what are you doing that for? He's like, man, I got to go see the man tomorrow. I was like, what did you do? And he said, I gave improper accountability or something. And so there he was.
They got
putting
me.
all this stuff on it. And he's trying to pin everything on there. And I'm like, man, don't do that. So, you know, put the cool stuff on there. A couple of them probably had a mustard saying on it.
Yeah.
Right? And then he shows up looking fresh, and everybody's like, who is this guy? Goes in, sees the commandant for about 2.5 minutes, and then comes back. So but the Rangers walked around with everything.
Yeah, we have
And
to.
you guys look smart.
Regulation.
You look sharp, you know? So you could see the culture difference. Even the SF guys, 18 series guys came in, and they would wear, you know, the green beret, and they'd
Hands
have
in their
long
pockets
tie.
all the time.
But there just wasn't necessary
Our hands were cold.
to wear the stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all knew that you probably had some schools under your belt.
Yeah.
But at that time, I mean, this is 2007. I mean, we'd already been in the fight for a while. SF had been in the fight for a really long time. Range had been in the fight a really long time. So, you know, it was what it was,
Yeah.
right?
I knew a lot of guys that wore their EIB instead of the CIB.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
I
too.
think after the
seen that
war
too.
broke out, there was a lot of that
Yeah.
because kind of everybody had a
Like the
CIB at that
EIB
point.
became cool because not a whole lot of people
Not
had
everybody
it.
made
right,
it
right,
through
yeah.
EIB.
Yeah. I mean, I got to see it kind of from both sides. I went, you know, downrange with a conventional unit and got to see, and then I got to do it on the soft side. And 7.62 by 39 does not know what color headgear you have on. You know what I mean? The Taliban didn't care what unit you were from. And, you know, I remember being in the Q course and having some instructors that were kind of like really being an a-hole. Like, well, you guys, when you get over to combat, when it's like, dude, 3/4 of the people in this class have already been to combat. And some of them probably have more months downrange than you do. Like if you were driving around, you know, the Abu Ghraib neighborhood of Baghdad in 2004 with the, you know, 1st Cav Division or the 3rd ID, or like, you saw combat. You saw it real close and personal.
Yeah.
You had a lot of days out there sweating and bleeding with your brothers and sisters. Like, it was hard as hell to be in those units. In many ways, more difficult than being in a soft unit where you might have a shorter deployment, or you might be able to go do a hit and then come back and swim in the pool.
Yeah.
Like, it was.
Oh yeah.
It was hard either way. and I got to see it from both sides, and I can tell you that there's no getting out of it with like who's cooler, who's better. The other thing is no matter how far down the line you go, there's always some other unit that's cooler than your unit.
It's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, when I was an SF team leader, one of the places that we lived for a while in Afghanistan was at a place called Fob Gecko, which is right outside of Kandahar. And I had a special forces team, like bona fide Green Berets. And on that same camp was another group of Green Berets that had like a cross-border mission. So they were like a special team on the white side, but still like they were like a special team. Then there was a small group of black side guys. Then the OGA compound was there. So all the CIA stuff was going on, running out of there. And they had like their little team of hitters that went and did stuff with them. And then the Canadian Tier 1 guys were just down the trail from us on the same compound. So I was an SF team leader, had a whole team of Green Berets there. And of like the 5 or 6 units on that camp, we were the least cool.
The lowest common denominator, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you just have to get over yourself and do the work that's in front of you, because the enemy doesn't care, for one. And for two, there's always some next thing you could go do. If being the coolest guy on the planet is important to you, good luck, because you're just not going to get there.
Yeah.
There's no such thing.
9 times out of 10, the people on the opposite side of that rifle don't even know who you are, right? They had that discussion about the Gulf War, and where they had soft units used to wear, like the regular desert pattern stuff, or they wore the chocolate chip stuff before he was even popular, and then they went to the normal pattern desert. Everybody else had the chocolate chip uniform on, except for like the National Guard folks that showed up. They had so the National Guard shows up, and the Iraqis automatically assumed they were soft because they were wearing the same uniforms that they were. So they were giving them the same type of respect that the soft units were getting, just because they didn't get the upgrade in the uniform. So that just goes to show that they just don't know.
Yeah, I had a different kind of experience. We get over to Afghanistan early '02, and we've got a couple of like former Mujahideen cats rolling with us. And when we would interact with anybody out there, they were convinced that we were the Russians. They thought we were still the Russians who had been there from the incursion. Absolutely.
That's wild.
Wow. Well, here's like one more anecdote on this. I had a guy I knew that was in 10th group, and they were in Baghdad during kind of the real heat of things, like 05, 06 surge, things were really heating up. And whenever they would go to do a close target reconnaissance of a compound they needed to hit, do you know what they would do to do a close target reconnaissance? They would get in a conventional Humvee, and they would put on full battle rattle with the regular unpainted helmets, and they were able to drive right by the target with cameras and everything sticking out of their trucks, and they could do a CTR all day long, every day, because they were so accustomed to big army units just driving up and down the streets, conducting movement IED, that if they wanted to get really close to a target, they would just pretend they were in the regular army, and they could just drive up to anybody and get all the video they wanted.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So crazy.
They would jump in Bradleys and jump in our convoys just to exploit that. So they would leverage
Why
the
look
constant
cool?
movement in and out of the neighborhoods, the mahalas.
Low vis.
Yeah.
High vis, low vis.
Exactly.
Right?
High vis,
That
low
Bradley isn't really low vis, but man, they're so used to seeing them. They're like, oh, that's nothing.
You guys both shared inside the book in the first chapter or so your stories, of resilience and some of the challenges that you went through early on. We can talk about that, but I think you guys have already shared a little bit about just some of the challenges and things that going into already. And not only that, but I don't want to steal too much away from the book, but I took some notes of some things that I did want to talk about. And that's those 5 factors that you talked about, which was change, uncertainty, acceptance, choice, and then growth. I think those are 5 key things that I would like to discuss a little bit further. So maybe you can go into that a little bit further for those who are listening. And
I want to interject something, and we talked about it before this, but I promised myself I was going to bring it up in here. So you mentioned the video. Would love to get that link in the video so people can see it. I'll tell you, when I first, and you guys heard this, but when I first watched you, I work for Ernst & Young now, Big Four accounting firm, professional business organization that people grow from teenagers and make it all the way to partner. And you guys walk out on stage and you carried yourselves like that. I mean, you weren't out there in the 5'11" cargo pants and, the good old boy trucker hat sitting back on the head. You came out super clean, super professional. Obviously, you guys speak well. And so when you first start the conversation, it's just like, oh, this guy's a CEO of something. And then you start discussing your background. But you didn't leverage your military background at first. You took the experiences that you have that are relevant to the audience, and they listen. You can definitely tell that there was listening involved. And then you were able to interject your military experience, but not in a way to where it overshadowed the message that you were trying to get across. I find that rare, especially nowadays, where people are trying to take the best social media version of themselves, their highlight reels, and they're throwing them out there and going, this is what I use, look at my long tab. This is why you should respect me. When most people can't identify with that, and they don't know what that means, but they can identify with well put together, can speak well, kind of command the room, and then you guys earned the respect of them, obviously, beforehand, so the things that you have to say were super relevant. Oh, by the way, and then you guys can get into your story, it's like, this is my story, you probably don't know this part of me. So now you've already created the foundation that had nothing to do with the military. Now they get to put all that on top of that foundation. It just makes it even better. So that's what I took from it. I gleaned a lot from that conversation. So
Thanks, man.
yeah, no, I appreciate that as a listener. I appreciate it more as a veteran because I feel, and we've had this discussion before, there's a certain population that just exploits the veteran experience.
Sure.
And tries to monetize it or get something free out of it. Whereas what you guys are doing with your company, with your book, the way that you speak to folks, you're not. You're using life experience. Oh, by the way, this was a part of my life.
Well, it's a street cred as well that we talked off air that you have outside of the military that I think complements that, which you understand your audience, which is number one thing, right? Know your audience, who you're speaking to. So I agree. I think it was a very well put together presentation.
The work is about them.
Yeah.
Not about us.
Not about us.
They hire us and they pay us fairly to come in and spend time with them so that they can get better.
Yeah. Fair point.
What's cool about the conversation that you had with them is that unless you tell me that you're hired to go do that, it felt like you were already a part of that organization and that they were just bringing out your experience to make that organization better.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 100%. That's the way I took it. I was like, oh, they both work. They're part of that company. I was like, what is that company there? And then come to find out, it's like, no. We were brought in. All right.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we really try to do is we want to be out on the trail with our partners. And that company specifically, we've been with them now for about a year, 6 months, maybe a year.
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Some of the other companies that we've been with now 3-4 years, and we look at it as the opportunity to be at the table with them. We're not standing up talking at you. We're right there with you, talking, with you. We want to share with you some of the hard-earned leadership wisdom that we have gotten over the last almost 30 years. And we used to tell people hard-won wisdom, but the truth is that a lot of the wisdom that we got was from a lot of losses, and we share that as well because that's just the truth. That's where you learn. And for us, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of veterans in a lot of cities. Blayne was the first employee of Team Red, White, and Blue, Team RWB. Wow. He conned me into coming on board and taking a 60% pay cut to be the first director of development. And, when we left that organization, it was 150,000 members, 211 communities, helping veterans live richer lives by connecting them back to their community through physical and social activity. And one thing that we saw, we did the work, we rolled up our sleeves right there, and we saw all the time is far more one downing than one upping.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Far more one downing. Well, I didn't do this, or I didn't that, or I only this, or I only that. And that's why, we first like, whoa, I got because the thing about it is that I have a really good friend, good Ranger buddy, jumped into Panama with 2nd Ranger Battalion, John Beagle, shout out, love that guy. And he always says, I know what you were doing when you were 18 years old. I know what you were doing, and you were serving your country. And there is no one downing of that.
Yeah.
When you could have been doing anything out there, you raised your hand and said, send me. Now, wherever you got sent or whatever you did, that's whatever, however it shook out, right? And one thing that we have learned and we share with a lot of veterans and non-veterans, but with a lot of veterans, is like, look, man, your story, you could use it to build a wall or a bridge. It's up to you, and we've all seen it, like I can build a wall, I can do the 1,000-meter stare, I can, big time everybody and whatever, Mr., I got, squirrel sandwich and blah, blah, whatever, right? I could do all that stuff and everything like that. But all I'm doing is I'm just building a wall. And all that is a defense mechanism in reality.
Big time.
I'm just keeping people away. Or we can build a bridge, and what we endeavor to do with our book, with our practice, is we want to build a bridge. We want to open up new windows into old truths that will help people to be more effective and to accomplish their mission, not our mission. Our mission is not to show up and entertain or, to be the coolest guys in the room. Our mission is to show up and serve you, to help you get where you're trying to go. And that's why we, shared some of those stories.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the framework a while ago, and we'll get into that because I think this is really important. If you write a book or share a story about some harrowing thing, it can inspire people. It can spark. We think of inspiration as kind of a spark. And it can get people to kind of sit up a little straighter in their chair and to think a little differently about their life. And that there's a lot of value in being inspiring. And we try to do that where we can. But as Brandon said, that is not really our job, is to just be inspiring. And so we think about how can we take this new perspective you may have on an important topic, and then how can we allow you to get it into your world, right? And that's why we think about frameworks. How do you actually apply these things? That's why it's the name of our business, Applied Leadership Partners. Because if you can't apply it and make it work where you're at, then we've done absolutely nothing for you, in our view at least. And so when we think about perseverance versus endurance, we had this sort of aha moment one day at the whiteboard where it was during COVID, and we're sitting back watching the world happen. And we're seeing good people, smart people, very capable, tough people kind of white knuckling it into April, into June, into July, right? And it's soon we're going to go back to the office. Soon things are going to go back to normal. And then
back to normal.
And what was driving people nuts was, and I want to be really clear, a lot of bad stuff happened during COVID to a lot of people. A lot of people lost their businesses, people got sick, people died. There were a lot of real world bad things that happened. I want to make sure that we're clear about that. But a lot of the people that we were close to and that we were observing, their lives weren't necessarily that difficult. They're working from home, they're having to balance kids. It was hard in a lot of ways, but it wasn't like existentially bad, but it felt that way to people. And our observation was, this feels so difficult to people because of the uncertainty. That's right. Not because of the absolute difficulty, but because of the uncertainty around it. It's making people crazy because no one knew what was going to come next. And we can appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'd had the ability to live in a world where we had to become more comfortable with that uncertainty. And so we started seeing it everywhere we looked. We're like, oh, this is what's happening. And this is where we came up with this idea that perseverance is actually different than endurance. And endurance, while it's really admirable and necessary to be able to just kind of put your shoulder to the wheel or put your head down and suck it up, grind it out, like we need to be able to do that in this world. There are times when it's absolutely called for, but there is a bottom to that well. You can't just do that in perpetuity. Then it's just chronic stress, burnout, you name it, right? Perseverance, we perceive to be quite a bit different, which requires you to adapt, to change, to grow, to become what it needs you to be. That was a profound thought that we kind of had at the whiteboard one day. And then we had to start thinking, well, great. I think it's an interesting thought, but like, how do you actually teach that to somebody? Other than just saying you need to persevere, what are the actual steps? What's a process? What's a framework through which you could understand the difference? And that's where we came with, change, uncertainty, acceptance, choice, and growth. I don't know if you want to dig into those a little bit, but
yeah, sure.
This is an important aspect of it.
So it's almost, I'm trying to tie it in. It's endurance is almost like a passive resilience where, it's mindless. You have to knuckle down. You have to do it, but you're just lockstep. You're grabbing the rucksack in front of you and you're following it, right?
You're leaning on what you already got.
That's right.
That's it.
Yep.
But there's nothing overt about it. where the perseverance is like you are consciously making a decision and an effort to be better than you normally are to get past this obstacle that's in front of you.
Yeah, in many ways, it's the difference between surviving and thriving.
Yep.
You know, when you're enduring, you can kind of survive. You know, we talk a lot about, if you think about endurance, you know, from point A to point B, by the time you get to point B, you're a more tired version of who you were at point A. But with perseverance, you're not the same person that shows up at point B. You have had to change. You've had to grow. You've had to learn how to, in some senses, surrender some things, which, as we know, surrender is not a Ranger word. It says that somewhere, right? That's hard, right? Surrender is awfully hard. But surrendering in the right direction, letting go of the things that you cannot control, and, you know, really shrinking the world down and taking the next good decision that you can take of what you can control, that's part of it. You know, that's a key part of it. So when we think about these, the 5 factors of perseverance, so change, uncertainty, acceptance, choice, and growth, starts with change. Things change fast and often without any warning. That brings upon uncertainty. And uncertainty is maddening because we as human beings crave certainty. We crave pattern. That's why we drink the same beers, we drink the same types of coffee, we wear the same types of clothes, because we're looking for some semblance of certainty in an otherwise uncertain and unpredictable world. And the thing about uncertainty is that it brings upon a basic human feeling, and that feeling is fear. We like to call it by a lot of cool names to make us feel better, like, I'm just a little frustrated, I'm just a little, you know, concerned, I'm feeling quite upset right now. It's fear, okay? And fear is the friction that holds us in place, right? And what we think, and when we, you know, this walking and talking through this at the whiteboard, we look at this and say, look, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to like ascend towards your purpose, or you're going to descend from your pain. One of the two things, you know, and like you see the little side steps, right? You make little concessions, you capitulate little things here. Oh, well, I'll just take the easy step here. Oh, well, I'll just take the easy step there. Oh, well, I know that's bad behavior from that colleague, but I'm just going to let it go this time. It's constant like sidestepping and letting things go. Or it is the ascendance running to your purpose. And that's where you get to acceptance, right? In the midst of that, you have this acceptance. This is where you accept what you can control, you accept what you cannot control, you let go of what you cannot control, because guess what? You can't control the world around you. All you control is you and how you behave in that world. You can make the best decisions that you can make, and then that's where choice comes in.
Yeah.
That is where you choose to become your values, your creeds, your ethos, all the things that you say you are. You get to choose to be that person every single day through the midst of this perseverance, and that's where growth comes. Growth comes on the other end of perseverance, and you start to achieve things that you maybe didn't think was possible before, because you weren't the person that was going to be able to achieve it at that point in time. But you grow and you become that person. You become wiser. You become a leader and a person who can persevere through adversity, because guess what? It's going to happen again. There's going to be more change. There's going to be more uncertainty. You're going to have to keep going.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you in the whole thing, but what got me excited was on that piece of it was the 4 block that I typically use a lot. So what you just said about, you know, focus on the things we can control. We're shooting for our goals. We're shooting for our objectives. Make sure that you're focusing on those things and improving on those things that we can actually affect. Well, the 4 block that you have in there about, you know, bottom left versus top left versus top right.
I love a good 2x2 matrix, man.
Right.
I love
So that was something that we did a scatter plot so many times inside that to be able to help people understand whether it's time versus money or whatever it may be in business. And it was so applicable when I heard you guys talking about it, and I read it within the book, and I was actually trying to find it because I was gonna like bring it into the conversation, but I can't remember exactly.
I think it's in acceptance. I think you're there.
I think what's good about that is that transparency, right? If we know what we're getting into, we kind of create some transparency, which takes the unknown out of it, makes us feel a little more resilient, a little more confident, takes some of the fear out of it. And I've had this, I love the way you guys put it, talking to soldiers as a first sergeant or as a sergeant major, and you tell them it's like doing a budget. People are so afraid of where their financial standing is and where it's going to be. And then you come to find out that they haven't done a budget. Like you're afraid because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's put it together. You guys have created an opportunity for success by taking some of the creating some transparency by creating a plan.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can be uncomfortable, but you don't have to live in that discomfort. You can find comfort within that discomfort, right? If it's raining, pull out your umbrella. Pinion used to do that. You'd have a whole bunch of people standing outside the motor pool, standing in the rain because, that's like, why are you doing that? You don't have to get wet. Pull out your wet weather top.
Gosh.
The Army gave it to you for a reason. It's not about living in this discomfort. It's about being comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, it's about clarity. You said transparency, which is a word we like a lot. I mean, clarity is really important. And we talk all the time with leaders and we say, look, your first job is to see the world as it is. And you probably know your world a lot better than we do. So let's have a conversation about what's really going on. And if you can name it, you take a lot of the stank off of it. Even if it's going to be really hard, these things are like vampires. They don't survive the light of day. Let's get them on the table. Let's talk about what's really going on, because you do no one a service by pretending that the world is the way that it used to be, or the way you wish it would be, or the way it's going to be in the future. That is not helpful. If a leader cannot first understand what's actually going on and then have a way to convey that very clearly to their people, you're toast. And you brought up a great point, which is that most people are better off and handle better than you would imagine bad news, tough situations, things like that. And I don't care whether you're the CEO of a company, a squad leader in combat, or a dad at home. There's going to be lots of opportunities where things are not going to go the way that you had planned for them to go. And you're going to have to sit down and look at your kids, your team members, et cetera, and say, hey, something bad happened, and I'm sorry, but here's where we're at, and here's what we got to do next. It's just a reality of life. Our friend Seth, who's the president of the University of Montana, by the way, his family went to Vienna last summer to go on vacation, and they were going to go to the Taylor Swift concert in Vienna. They have 2 daughters. It was the only thing they got for Christmas. So they had been waiting 6 months to get their Christmas gift. They're going to go to this amazing thing. Show gets canceled the day before. They've already bought their merch.
Bomb threat.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, and I think about that, and that sounds like a first world problem.
That was the one where they went outside and started singing. All the fans were singing in the streets
and exchanging their bracelets and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you what, I've been through some hard things in my life, and I've been through some really scary shit. And when my friend Seth told me that he had to look his daughters in the eye and tell them that they weren't actually going to go to get to see the Taylors, I was like, dude, I would rather go back to Afghanistan, Iraq, you name it, than I would not have wanted to been there in that hotel room looking at those 2 little girls and telling them that, hey, we came all this way and we're not going to get to see this concert.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. But as a leader of your family, you've got to do that. You can't skirt around it. You can't pretend like, well, maybe they'll have it tomorrow. No, they're not.
They're not going to have it tomorrow.
No, they're not.
Yeah. Tay-Tay's going to be in Germany tomorrow.
It's over, kids.
No, but Sean, you said this before, and I think that this is exactly what you're getting after is there's got to be a relatability there, right? And the thing about it is we all us veterans, we've done a lot. We've seen a lot. As Blayne said, we've seen some shit. We've experienced some pretty significant suffering. And I'll tell you what, we have no monopoly on hardship. And I think that it's an important part for us. We are still amongst the military and veteran population are still, I think they're ranked as the most trustworthy of all social institutions in America, right? People still see veterans and military and say, that's trustworthy. I can see that. I think that's where we have the opportunity there to build that bridge and help people, give them some affirmation. You're in the midst of going through a big restructure right now. Guess what? It's hard.
Yeah.
I went through it. It's freaking hard, or you just had to lay off 5 people. That's hard. That sucks, but I think that we get it wrong when we, kind of poo-poo that and act like, well, that's not hard.
Nobody's shooting at us.
Yeah, nobody's shooting at us today. It's like, yeah, great. They didn't sign up to be in the military. And you know what? They're actually experiencing a significant emotional event because it's probably a signal that they care. So that's pretty damn great. Let's not tear that down. Let's build them up. And we tell these people all the time, like, geez, man, you guys have been through a lot. One of our clients has been through like 3 capital events in an 18-month period. With private equity, mergers, acquisitions, all this kind of stuff. Guess what? They're smoked. They've been through a lot.
Well, you can't invalidate their feelings of stress and angst just because you don't understand where they're at, or there's no death associated with it.
Right.
Right. Oh, I tell, the auditors all the time, they look stressed. They're like, well, it's never something that you've gone through. And I was like, I'm feeling your stress, and I'm telling you, man, there's congruency between what I'm feeling right now and the shit that I've dealt with. So nobody's invalidating what you're feeling, because your feelings, your perception of what you're going through is your reality. I have no place to stand on that other than to empathize with you and then try to help you through it. Oh, by the way, I'm feeling the stress too.
Yeah.
So no, it's great. I love it.
Yeah. Perseverance is best to be not done alone, by the way. So that's exactly the point that you're making right there. Yeah. Anywhere worth going is only worth going together, right? And so you coming alongside some of those folks, I mean, you have an amazing credibility already because of what you've experienced. Yeah. And to be able to come alongside, some of those auditors and just say like, bro, I'm with you. Like this bites. What are we gonna do? What's the next good step? Next best step we can make, I mean.
The auditors are like the Cab Scouts of the financial world. That's
big ups,
man. I'm telling you,
alone and unafraid.
When you have auditors,
that's got to be on a T-shirt or something. Man, I don't know.
It's like I had no clue, and to resource manage for a group of people that have that sort of resilience. I'm going to use perseverance though. Believe me, and I'll reference you guys. I'm going to use that in some of the discussions that I have because it's absolutely relevant.
So we cover the change, uncertainty, and acceptance. Next is choice, though. Mm-hmm. So then it's about choosing to make sure you're accepting what you're going through, the challenges that you're experiencing.
I think it's about, so the reason we differentiate those two is this. You can fully accept where you're at and what you can control and what you can't. You can get real clarity on the moment you're in, but then you have to decide what you're going to do about it. Right? So you can half step it, you can quit, you can go the other way, or you can do what Brandon said and take one small step in the right direction. And it's not a choice, it's a series of choices. I think that's the thing that we really need to understand is that if we're going to persevere and through that, if we're going to grow, there's a level of consistency and commitment associated with that. Because what's going to happen is something really bad is going to happen. It's going to shake you. You're going to think about it really hard. Maybe you get around with your buddies and your teammates and you say, hey, we can do this. It's going to be okay. Here's where we're at. That's a good first step. And then you drop your plan and you take your first step and then something bad happens again. You got to make another choice to kind of keep going. And so the reason that choice is so important is because you don't get credit in this life for being able to do things. You get credit for doing things.
That's right.
Right? And so you get to choose whether or not you're actually going to enter the arena over and over again and do this. I could tell you hundreds of stories of people that have come up to me for whatever reason had said, like, I was thinking about going SF, but. And it's like, fine. First of all, you don't need to tell me that. Whatever you did is fine. I couldn't care at all. I respect whatever you did, military or otherwise. But you don't get credit for thinking about it or being able to do it, or like, I got into Duke, but I didn't go because I didn't want to go so far. Fine, great. You don't get the credit for it unless you actually did it. And there are an awful lot of people out there that are not nearly as credentialed, that didn't have nearly as many opportunities, that are doing what they can, where they can with what they got, and those people are the ones that end up getting things done. I mean, how long has this podcast been going on? 10 years?
Yeah.
Huge budget, I bet, right?
Yeah.
Lots of advertising?
Yeah.
No.
Zero
No,
sponsors.
but this is my point.
Exactly right.
When you had 3 episodes that 4 people downloaded, you chose to do another one.
Right.
Right? And then when you got to your 15th or 20th episode and 100 people downloaded it, you gave a high five to each other, right?
Yeah.
And you used that encouragement to keep going. and you didn't compare yourself to Rogan or Rich Roll or whoever else is out there, that's all great. But you keep making that choice day after day. And now here you are 10 years in and lots of people listen. You got a cool studio here. Your guests are still a little suspect, but
he ain't wrong. He ain't wrong.
But this is exactly how it works. And let me ask you another question. Is the podcast better now than it was 10 years ago? Are you better at doing this? Yes.
It's easy.
Yes. It's because you guys haven't just endured.
Yeah.
You've persevered.
Yeah.
Right.
You've stuck with it. Different hosts, different setups. You had to switch to video. You got a better studio now. You're better at this. This is exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes that choice over and over again. But you do get there if you keep doing it.
You're applying things, though, that are, well, some may be listening and thinking, oh, it's just only the private sector. How does this apply to the military? Absolutely everything you just described is what a person is going to endure through their military career. You mentioned wisdom. Wisdom comes from making mistakes and learning from them, hopefully, right?
Yep.
And so too often within the military, you make good choices, you make bad choices, you know, things happen bad either to yourself or to your loved ones or teammates or whatever the case may be based on your individual decisions, but you keep driving forward. And I think that's what you guys are saying. Keep going, keep climbing the mountain, because through that whole thing is the last thing, which is growth, which is you were touching on there. Growth, again, is part of that wisdom. It's that knowledge. And then you almost reset and recycle all over again. I don't know if you guys do, but I know for me, I tend to stay with organizations in the private sector anywhere from 3 to 7 years, somewhere in that time frame. It's sort of like a PCS assignment. You know, you go there, you get your gig, you do your thing, and then you go, and it's nice that you can reinvent yourself where you can have the same passion and purpose, but you get to apply it in a different way. And I think that's one of the beauties that the military offers you, is the ability to grow inside the service by choosing different skills, like you grew in the different schools that you went through and the different experiences that you had, and the same with you, Brandon. But I want to make sure that people understand that the book applies to so many different elements, not just the private sector.
Yeah.
I would say, and to your point, I mean, you get to reinvent yourself in the military, even when you don't want to.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? You're going to Fort Hood, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to reinvent myself, and from there, I think where the success and where the veterans receive a lot of accolades is our ability to maneuver and become successful in something else into that unknown, and some of that is just, through leadership, right? We don't have positions that are managers. Like I work in a firm right now where they have positions like managers, senior manager. We manage inanimate objects and calendars, but we don't manage people unless you just want to be transactional. We want to lead people, and that's what happens in the military. We have a left and a right limit. We get to use some discipline initiative to meet the commander's intent, and then we're mission complete, right? So when you leave that's ingrained. Also, the ability to go out there and try to persevere. Hopefully it's not just endure, right? Some of it's enduring.
Sure.
It's admirable, but necessary at times.
It's almost like we're learning this through osmosis, but I think it's really important that we have gentlemen like you two that bring it out into the light and go, hey, we know you're doing this, but we're gonna bring the why you're doing this and why it's important to light. This is why you need to continue to do what you're doing. If you're not doing it, then hey, stud, this is what you need to be doing, right? So I love that. If you think about most of the things that we remember and the anecdotal stuff and the stories, it was all the hard shit we did. I don't go out and tell people about the fun stuff. I mean, I remember sitting on top of Antelope Mound in Fort Hood and just laughing. That's not what we talked about. We're going to talk about how I broke some torque bars and my gun was malfunctioned, and we were doing it,
through track at JRTC.
You know what I mean, right? We were mired, and we were out in the mud, and that's the stuff that we remember because it's hard.
Always cold.
But we persevered past that.
Yeah. So. It's the through line that you can't see when you're doing it, that the wisdom allows you to understand a little better looking back on it. I think that's the thing, is like you said, reinvent yourself. You said grow. I mean, there's no way I'm sitting here right now doing this for work if I would have set out to do this. It's been one of these.
Yeah.
My whole life, my whole professional career, it's been a series of do something, try to be good at it, then cash it all in and try to do something else, figure out how to be good at that and start over. Now I can look back and I can see, oh yeah, that's exactly how it was all supposed to work. Yeah. But when you're in the thick of it, you don't know that. You just have to kind of keep your eyes on the prize. And like you said, purpose, having some kind of North Star that you're driving toward, even if it's way out in the distance and even if it's just a general direction, if you can get clear on who you are and who you're trying to be and what you care about and what you stand for, when things get really hard and disorienting, you can at least generally orient yourself and say, hey, what would be in keeping with who I'm really trying to be right now, even if you have no plan.
Yourself, not trying to emulate somebody else. Who are you, I think is what you're stating. Figure that out.
So what are your thoughts about mentors in this process?
I mean, critical. Like, I think a lot of what we're talking about, and as it relates, you asked specifically about how do you locate this within the military context. And I would just add to what Blayne just said is that I think a lot of this is about extending the time horizon, like getting a little bit introspective in that regard and understanding that you might be, at an assignment that you just hate, right? Maybe you ended up getting, you wanted to do one thing and you ended up going somewhere else, whatever, right? Part of this is just to recognize that, like the moment, though it may be uncomfortable, though it may not be what, you kind of were hoping for, what's your mission? Like take a step back, because the mission is greater than the moment. If you keep focusing on the moment and the discomfort of it, whether that be a 30-mile road march or an assessment and selection course or a shit deployment that you don't want to be on or an assignment, whatever, if you keep focusing, on that moment, imagine doing a 30-mile road march and looking at every single footfall on the ground in microscopic detail. That 30-miler is going to feel like an 80-miler by the end of the thing. But you got to keep your eyes on the horizon and extend that time horizon to get a sense of like, okay, wait a minute. I've experienced difficult things before. I've experienced letdown in the past. How can I maybe think about what I took from that and think about where I can go from here? Because, for any of the military that are still in and they're listening to this, I mean, there was no straight line, for either of us to any of what people might call like the accomplishments. There's no escalator to the top of anything that you're trying to do. It doesn't matter what it is you're trying to do, whether you're in the military or not. And there are times when, you kind of hit some of those valleys, right? You don't just jump from hilltop to hilltop in life. There were plenty of situations that I experienced when I was in the military where I felt like the ground came out from under me, right? Whether it was I thought I was doing things that were culturally in keeping with the unit and the mission. Turns out I was a little overzealous and I got in trouble, right? Oh, well, now I'm not a leader anymore. That's a problem for me. So what do I do? And you ask about mentors and the importance of that, and I'll go back. One of the Ranger legends who gave me incredible mentorship was a guy named Command Sergeant Major Hugh Roberts. He was the regimental sergeant major. Before that, he was the 2nd Ranger Battalion sergeant major. And, so I'm in the military, right? At this point in time, I think I was a staff sergeant. I'd been a squad leader for like a year. And I was coming to the end of my enlistment, and I had gotten in some trouble before that. I was a buck sergeant, actually. I had gotten some trouble before that on what we call a peak hazing incident. Anyways, moving past.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. So I got in trouble, but what had happened to me though is that I had realized that the opportunity that I had to be a leader in the Rangers, that I felt like I had squandered it. I really did. In fact, my then girlfriend said to me, "Hey, how many guys have you sent to Ranger school successfully?" And I said, 0. And she said, "Well, isn't that kind of your job though? Is to develop these guys and help them, help them to like really grow." And I was like, whoa.
Ouch.
Yeah, very ouch.
I mean, like getting punched in the face. Huh?
Right here in the heart, because for me, like I had grown up in a rough home. My dad took off on us when I was 11. Man, like I felt like burning the world down from my time as being a kid. And I was just a lit fuse all the time. And my choice at that point in time was, I'm just going to get out. And Sergeant Major Roberts was just like, hey, you need to come and sit with me, right? And Battalion Sergeant Major, he doesn't want me. I was either an E5 or an E6, I don't remember. So I go back and I remember telling him, he said, why are you getting out? And I used to always say this to the first sergeant, what are you going to do when you get out? I'm going to go back to California and sell drugs. That's what I would say to him all the time. He's like, you're such an asshole. Yeah. I'm like, I know, all right. But so I go and, you don't play that with Sergeant Major Roberts. You can't run that track on him. So he says, why are you getting out? And it was cutting the crap. I said, I failed. That's why I'm getting out. I had the opportunity to be, a leader here, and I've screwed it up. I've gotten in trouble, and, he just kind of sat with me a couple weeks at a time, every 2 weeks, and we'd sit and we'd kind of talk and be like, okay, well, what if you did it differently? What if you tried a different approach? What if you engaged this way? And he really mentored me to give it another chance. And he cut the crap. He had the real conversation and actually asked me, if you can imagine, 10 years, 20 years down the road, will you be proud of yourself for leaving in the condition that you're leaving right now? And I could honestly say, no, I wouldn't. He said, well, why don't you do a 2-year reenlistment, give it another crack, and let's see what happens. And I would go on, and I reenlisted 2 more times. I did 11 years total. But I think that's important for folks that are in the military. Like, look, there's no silver bullet in life. There's no magical, transformation that's going to happen. You don't slide into growth. You actually have to get your ruck back on, make some choices that are in keeping with who you say you want to be, right? I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be a leader of character. I wanted to be excellent and actually do it and get after it. And I would have never had that kind of clarity had I not had a mentor who actually...
Your video needs to match your audio. Right?
Yeah.
In terms of this, right?
I don't know if we're talking about recording right now. Are we talking like meta? Everything just got so meta right now. I don't even know what's happening.
Just so everybody understands what's happening, I got a fat ass head in the way. And so Rob was trying to pull me out of the engagement area.
Yeah.
Brandon was sitting there looking, huh?
Oh, okay. I'm not even sure what
he's leaning. He's leaning over like this.
Into the conversation.
Sean, I blacked
Blayne
out.
is going totally out of the picture.
It's the gravitational pull of my head.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. The audio needs to match the visual. I heard that in the Sergeant Major Academy by our commandant there. There was, he would tell us that all the time. I mean, there was 2 things that I pulled from the academy. One was that where, people talk a big game, but if you're not actioning on the things that you're talking about, then why do people respect you? Hey, Lieutenant, I need you in the motor pool. There's an implied task there when you go to the motor pool, which is to oversee the PMCS of the vehicles and to speak and grow and talk to your platoon sergeant. But if you're just out there, licking windows,
You better be chasing parts at the BMO's office. I'll tell you that right now. Any lieutenants out there, a little tip. You better get real good at tracking parts.
You know that.
You'll be the most valuable player of your platoon if you can do that. Otherwise, you're mostly worthless at first. So
and then
figure out a way to track them parts.
So it's not just being there. It's what you're doing while you're there. What are your actions, right? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
On the objective, what are you doing? Right.
I took away from what you just said too, though, taking on what you had mentioned about growth and stuff and what we were talking about, you expanded upon that. And so once you get to figuring out who you are, what you want to be, and looking introspectively, then you're going to be a better leader in terms of building teams, having empathy for other individuals, and making sure that you kind of understand how to spot the what was it? The Good to Great book talked about putting the right people on the bus.
Yeah.
You'll know how to identify those individuals because you'll know where they are in that stage of growth, as to whether or not they're capable of taking on the additional pressures and going through the additional challenges that you're about to endure. And so, I mean, once you get to the point where I think you can start building high-performing teams, that's when you can sit back and they come to you with the problem and the solution at the same time frame. That's the ultimate in the growth aspect, I think, because then you know that you've imparted that knowledge. They're now taking on what you've shared with them and starting to use that as part of their basis in everyday life as well. Yeah. I think it's powerful, definitely. You guys talked about something, the Stockdale paradox. Maybe cover that a little bit, because that stood out to me. It was one of the things I wrote down.
Yeah, sure. So like almost everybody at this point, we read Good to Great. Yeah. So Jim Collins made the Stockdale paradox famous.
Yep.
And that's where I first read about it, probably 20, 25 years ago. And we wrote a blog post early days of COVID where we wanted to highlight this, because we kind of were able to sit back and see what was going on. And, we didn't have everything figured out, but we had been through some things that gave us a little bit of perspective on we can see people and the uncertainty is really shaking them. And so the Stockdale paradox is basically the sense that you can't be a pure optimist and say, we're going to be home by Christmas. That was the Hanoi Hilton sort of example, right? But you also can't be a defeatist and say we're screwed. And, I think the line in the book that we use is that, it's not that we're fine or that we're screwed. It's neither. We're not fine. Things are hard right now. Things are broken. Things need to get fixed. We need to get to work. But we're not screwed either, right? We can do some things to kind of repair the relationships or the business and move forward. So it's sort of like a hopeful pragmatism. And I think in times of real uncertainty, when you're really scared, if we can use that word, that's the place to be, because you can't assure a specific outcome. You don't know exactly how things are going to go or when it's going to be over, how it's going to look on the other side. But you also know that you still retain always at least a kernel of control of how you show up, the effort you put in, the relationships you build. And so all you can really do is give yourself the best opportunity to be successful each and every time. And if you do that, then maybe after doing that twice, things work out. Maybe after you do 200 times, it works out. But either way, you're taking control of the one thing you have, which is sort of your attitude toward the effort. And you're not saying, if I just do things right, it's definitely going to work out, because maybe it's not. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and we have to share that with her sometimes. Like, if I practice piano really hard and take voice lessons, I'm going to be just like Taylor Swift, right? And we're like,
about that.
And what I want to say is definitely not, because it's almost impossible. I don't quite say that, but I just say, maybe.
Yeah.
But all you can do is, if you love music, you can play piano and you can sing and you can write songs, and mom and dad are going to support you every step of the way. And maybe just the people at the local karaoke place are going to think you're the best singer in town, and maybe you're going to sell hit records. We don't know. But you can't just say, I'm never going to be Taylor Swift, so I'm going to fold up shop. And you can't say, if I just practice every day, then I'll for sure be like, it's neither. It's neither. That's the Stockdale paradox.
Yeah. Being a realist is part of it. Understanding your real situation, what you're in.
Yeah, it's being where your feet are.
Right.
Be actually present in it. And, we talk about this all the time, and stop trying to create false finish lines. It's not going to help you, right? We share the illustration in this book of, unknown distance marches, right? And so for anybody who's watching or listening to this, that's the exact right response to an unknown distance march. If you don't know what that is, it's very simple. Put all of your gear on. So, call it whatever, 65-pound rucksack and all of your kit. So let's call it 100 pounds, and go until somebody says stop. Oh, and by the way, if you go slower than a 15-minute per mile pace, this Bluebird bus that's following you, your ass is getting on that bus and you're out of the course, or you're out of whatever it is that you're trying to do, the competition, the course. I experienced that in the Best Ranger competition. We experienced that in Special Forces Assessment and Selection. For me, Ranger Indoctrination Program, the Unknown Distance March. And I will tell you what happens every single time is that somebody says, what mile are we at? We're on mile 16. Oh, there's no way they're going to take us past 17 or 18. I bet we're going to be done at 18. And once you get to mile 19, they break. Yeah. Because you're trying to project forward something that you cannot control. That's not the way the world works. And that's why we do those unknown distance marches, because we're trying to see, what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do when you actually can't look down at your, Maps app and you can't plot exactly where you are and exactly how far you've gone and what next turn you're supposed to make in what distance? Like, what are you going to do when all that's stripped away from you? That's the reality of it. Like, that's the Stockdale paradox. It's that pragmatism. Don't create false finish lines, but don't act like everything is just detonated in front of you already anyways. Be where your feet are. Keep moving. Make one next good decision you can at a time.
I've seen celebration happen at the end of those, right? Yeah. I mean, some of the biggest celebration, something that we can all probably relate to is, the commander gets out there during a battalion or a brigade run, and you're anticipating that you're going to stop right in front of the battalion headquarters, and that bad Johnny keeps on a-going, and you thought you were doing 10 miles, and it turned into 16.
That's right.
But you want to see some boo-boo faces and some broken hearts. Watch how everybody's disposition changes right in front of the battalion headquarters as they run past it at an 8-minute mile pace, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. It's because, and that's the idea and the difference of enduring versus persevering, because you have in your mind, this is all I've got to do. I've just got to make it to the battalion headquarters. And then what happens when the battalion headquarters ain't the finish line? Like, you're hosed. If you're just holding on, I'm just white knuckling it until I get to the battalion headquarters, you're screwed when you're another mile down the road.
That's when it's nice to have somebody that gives you a little bit of expectation management.
Yeah.
Like what you're giving people right now, which is, you might stop there.
Yeah.
Well, you might not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great.
Where can people find this after February 11th?
Oh, I love saying this. Can I say it?
You do it. Do it.
You can buy it wherever books are sold.
Hey.
But yeah, seriously, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever, it's going to be available everywhere. You can get it now, pre-order it until February 11th.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah.
You can. Yeah.
And then on February 11th, you can
Amazon, all that, right?
get it. Yeah, there's an Audible version, so if you prefer to listen, then please feel free to do so.
It's pretty cool too.
Yeah. Good to hear you guys talk.
It's not us.
It's
Not
No,
us.
so you want a quick funny story on this?
Good though.
So when we signed our contract to write the book, and if anyone knows how publishing works, it's a long, painful process. Our publisher's been amazing, but here's how it goes. You get an agreement with your publisher. They agree to pay you some advance or whatever in order to write the book. You have to write it by a certain time. And one of the little things they have in there is like, if you get an audiobook version, do you want to narrate the book yourself? We said, yeah, we'd like to if we could. So we finished the book. It goes through edits. It's all ready to go. We get a publishing date, and we're starting to try to promote the book. And then one day we get an email. Like, when was it? Not long ago, right? 8 weeks ago?
Yeah, something like that. It might have been October or November.
Yeah, not that long ago. We get an email saying, great news. We sold the rights to your audiobook. It's going to be for this much money. Does that sound okay to you? Let's move quickly so we can have it ready by the time your book releases. And him and I were like, did you know that we got to sell the audio
That's
rights?
a thing?
Like,
I didn't.
dude, they're just going to give us...
Okay.
Okay. It's like buying...
Do they know that they already paid us?
It's like buying that $20 bill in your jeans in the laundry. We're like, no way, dude. It's not, first of all, it's not a lot of money, but it's like, it's a surprise.
Yeah,
it's
it's pretty
great.
Yeah, we're like, dude,
$20.
amazing, so great. So we just
than-
we just sold our audiobook. That's cool. I didn't even know that was a thing. And then they said, look, if we're going to get this turned around and done in time for the book release, like there is no time, like we're going to hire a professional voice actor. You guys can sample a few different ones, pick who you like. But we got to get this moving right away. And they've been great. The voice actor who's reading it is awesome. And they've come back to us with some little edits and questions. They're going to nail it. And we're excited about it. So a little bit of a bummer, but I think it's going to be fine.
Yep.
So Morgan Freeman, huh?
We had to pay all of our advance times 100 to get Morgan Freeman, but it's probably going to be worth it. Yeah.
He said no.
All right, February 11th, Perseverance is greater than endurance. What you can do is you can go out to all those bookstores and go ahead and purchase your copy now. Get ahead of the power curve. Encourage you to do it. It's been a great book. I got a chance to only read portions of it quickly before you guys came on the show, because from the time that you guys notified us, gave us the book, and then we got on here, it was lightning speed.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you guys were able to come in studio, be nearby, going to hold a a meeting and stuff like that where you could stop by and have a conversation with us. We really do appreciate it, man. Big time.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you guys.
And then come back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Say the word.
Yeah.
As you
Most
guys
definitely.
get punched in the face again and then come back
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
describe
man.
those.
Yeah. I'll be like, it was so much worse than I thought it was going to be. It happened again, Sean. Rob, it happened again.
Well, I'm gonna let you on a little secret. Writing and publishing a book is basically, you see like the little ridge line that's on here?
Yeah.
That's basically the experience. You're like, oh, we sold a book. Now we have to do this. Now we have to do that. It's a constant.
Yeah.
You're confident. You're not so confident. And you're like, oh man.
Give your company name again.
Applied Leadership Partners.
So the acronym for that is,
ALPS.
and then you've got the
I know.
get out of here.
Pretty cool, right?
Get out of
Pretty
here.
cool.
I'm not the smartest
It
guy.
happened in a dream. I woke up. I sketched it out.
Well, I'll make sure I put the talk that you guys did, that you sent me the link on, as well in the show notes. So they'll be able to click onto that, go and watch that as well, which gives them a little bit of a snippet of at least the first couple chapters or a little highlights and stuff within the books, which I think is very helpful. And it tells more about you guys' story that we didn't expand upon here, because then it would have been like, oh, I heard that. Now I'm going to read it in the book. And I didn't want to get into all that, but great stories and ways in which you guys weave your experiences inside the book and applied leadership. Again, really can't say enough how much I appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Seriously.
Thanks for having us. It's an honor.